Hello, wonderful butterflies of this world. It's your host here, Ash from Butterfly Shots. Welcome back to Ash Unmasked, the podcast where we talk about everything and anything, from books to life's little drama stories to everything in between. If you're new here, hang on tight. If you've been around a while, you already know this. Ash loves to talk and loves books. And this is our fifth episode in the mini-series discussing Accept Value and Empower Yourself by David Bonham-Carter. Just reminding y'all that we really enjoyed this book because it's practical, simple, and rooted in CBT techniques. It is packed with exercises and grounded tips. We loved it enough to dedicate 5 full episodes to unpack each chapter. Before we get back into the subject, a quick heads up that some parts of this book and episode might be triggering if you're dealing with mental health situation or working through tough things. If you're someone struggling with mental health and still would like to do some self-work, our advice would be to take your time and maybe get some help from a pro if that feels right for you. In the last episode, we explored the fourth chapter of the book, Understand Yourself. And in this episode, we're diving into the final chapter, which is called Empower Yourself. So grab a cookie and a latte, or your favorite snack and beverage, and let's get to it, shall we? Boom, 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 boom. Bomb! Hello, wonderful butterflies of this world. This is an update from behind the lens. At Butterfly Shots Photography, we've been quietly working hard behind the scenes, rebranding our website, also taking on a very few selected contracts, making sure every shoot gets the attention it deserves. That being said, something new is coming. We've been working hard on a special instant photo souvenir project because memories deserve to be printed, to travel with us, to be stuck in our special places long after the shutter clicks. Stay tuned, butterflies. We're just getting started. Follow us on social medias at Butterfly Shots Photography to hear all about our new services and products. We don't just take photos, we catch moments in flight. Butterfly shots, butterfly, fly, butterfly, flight. Get it? Okay, bye. Back to the episode now. Boom, 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 boom. Chapter 5 is all about empowering yourself through assertiveness. The author starts by talking about the ways that we human typically interact with others passively, assertively, or aggressively. A passive behavior would mean to avoid conflict, to let others make decisions for you, or to be taken advantage of. This sort of behavior is usually tied to low self-esteem because if you think about it, it's simple. If you don't value yourself, you tend to give in or avoid standing up for your views. Hello, people pleasing. Aggressive behavior is quite the opposite. It is freely expressing your wants and needs while ignoring others' feelings, sometimes in intimidating or rude ways. The passive-aggressive behaviors are really just silent aggressiveness. A person who is passive-aggressive may sometimes appear to be passive while actually sabotaging another person. Creating confusion to avoid doing something is one example of a passive-aggressive behavior, or someone saying, "Oh, it's fine," while plotting revenge. Assertiveness. Assertiveness is the middle ground. It means to clearly express your needs, to stand up for your rights, while also respecting others' views. An overview of the key elements of assertiveness are clarity, reasonableness, honesty, and respect. Honest, clear, respectful, and firm. Get your point across without causing a war. Remember in chapter 1 when the author was suggesting that the middle category of level of self-esteem is the one to aim for, because too high of a self-esteem or too low of a self-esteem is not great. But a middle ground is good. In the same way, the author encourages us to aim to be assertive. Someone with good self-esteem tends to act assertively, speaking honestly, reasonably, and respectfully. However, aggressive behavior can be extreme. Someone who acts aggressively will express their own need and want freely, often without thoughts or feeling about others. Confession time. We tend to get very passive, letting things slide. We stay quiet until boom, internal volcano eruption. When we explode, straight to aggressive mode. Loud, sharp, ouch! Anyway, since we've been doing this self-esteem work, we noticed that this cycle is slowing. Slowly, assertiveness feels more accessible. It's like we feel like we deserve to speak up. Recently, instead of reacting instantly, we took a deep breath, chose our words carefully, and said what needed to be said, respectfully and clearly. We're being very patient and kind with ourselves while we're learning how to do this. Mistakes are allowed because nobody's perfect. We're growing. And often people with mental health situation might feel like they're taking one step forward and then 3 steps back. Apparently, it's part of the process, so we keep reminding ourselves to be kind and patient. The book does outline some useful tips for assertiveness, like using I statement. I feel like this. I would prefer if. Also to clarify when it's just your opinion, saying things like, my view of this is that, my perception is that. Also to ask open questions like, what's your take on this? What do you think of this? What's your opinion? Also to mind your body language. That means to have no wild gesturing in people's faces. We're still struggling with that because our hands, they just like to flap around. Anyway, the author also talks about getting feedback from people you trust. We're not always self-aware. No worries. This all goes to say that it's not just words. Body language matters too. A good way to be more assertive is to speak in a warm tone, using friendly gestures without invading personal space, and to try to make appropriate eye contact. Well, we have a lot of stuff to learn from this chapter. The author does give a few tips that might be helpful to get feedback from others. To ask them how they perceive our posture, expression, or gesture, just to know if we may seem assertive. Sometimes it's hard to take a step back and see ourselves in the eyes of others. What's better than to ask them? The author also underlines many benefits to being assertive, feeling better about yourself, feeling able to relax, having greater awareness of your own needs and a greater ability to meet them, being able to create personal and professional goals instead of putting everyone and everything first, participating in honest, constructive relationships. Remember that being assertive is not about forcing your views on others or dominating the conversation. The author illustrates different behaviors with 2 different case studies. The first case study talks about Angie with a passive behavior, and the second case study talks about Richard with an aggressive behavior. We won't go over these case studies today, but feel free to check out the books for plenty of case studies and practical tips. We will leave the link to the book in the show notes. We did get ours from the library and then returned it. This is when the author invites us to try an exercise, which is called exploring your patterns of behavior. It does underline that we, as a person, we never really fit neatly into categories. This is more to get an idea of tendencies, to know if we tend to adopt passive or assertive or aggressive behaviors. This exercise is in 3 parts. The first part is about exploring the passive behavior. Some question to ask yourself, do you have a tendency to act passively at times? Think of an example where you acted passively. What perceived payoff did you hope to get by acting passively? Real payoff or just imagined payoff? Think about this for a minute. On our part, we do have a tendency with passive behavior. We will act passively until we explode and become aggressive. But it does seem that the more we work on our self-esteem, the less desire we have to stay passive, to accept whatever we're given from people without speaking up. In the past, adopting passive behavior got us liked by people, but it made us feel bad on the inside. It got us walked over, taken advantage of. We had way too much. The second The second part of this exercise is to explore patterns over aggressive behaviors. Basically the same exercise, but instead of passive behaviors, it's about aggressive behaviors. Do you have a tendency to act aggressively at times? If so, think of one example of a situation where you acted aggressively. What perceived payoffs did you hope to get by acting aggressively? Were they a real payoff or just imagined payoff? Think about this for a second. We do have this tendency. As we just said, we tend to have passive behavior until we get fed up and then adopt aggressive behavior, especially when we get mad. We'll speak loudly and be very rude. We get this way when overwhelmed. Somehow our nervous system thinks he's protecting us. That being said, mental health disorders does affect us. It is something we're working hard on. This brings us to the third part of this exercise, all about exploring assertive behaviors. Same concept here, but with assertive behaviors. Think of one occasion where you acted reasonably, assertively. What benefits did you get from acting assertively in this situation? What helped you to act assertively in this situation? Think about this for a second. Personally, we were able to adopt more assertive behaviors lately, especially by not reacting right away, by taking the time to compose ourselves before reacting or answering. We try picking each word we use and try to stay calm. We were able to communicate what we meant clearly and stand up for our own rights while remaining respectful and honest. We feel very proud achieving this, and this is something that we will be working on a lot in the near future. We did notice that achieving this type of behavior actually helped to boost self-esteem. That being said, being assertive is not that easy. On our part, we couldn't just be assertive. We didn't know how. Now, this book is primarily aimed at helping people with low self-esteem. This next part describes 2 methods for people who have low self-esteem to become more assertive. They're especially linked to a tendency to act passively. The first method the author proposes is called the deal method, and the second is called the STAR model. The deal method is actually an acronym that stands for describe, express, ask, and listen. The author underlines that the deal method builds on the 4 key elements of assertive behaviors mentioned earlier, which were clarity, reasonableness, honesty, and respect. First, describe the situation or behavior that is troubling you. Then, express your feelings and thoughts about it. Next, ask for reasonable changes that you would feel would help. Then, listen and negotiate for reasonable solution if possible. In essence, this is about developing negotiation skills to prepare to get a reasonable deal. A way to think about discussing something is to think about it like a negotiation. A good way to prepare for conversations is to identify for yourself things you're prepared to compromise on and things that you're not willing to compromise on. And also to use knowledge of what you know personally of the person to give yourself some thought in advance as to how they may respond. Be prepared to listen to what the other person has to say, but also make sure that you prepare to get your point of view across and feelings across. Prepare for how you may try to move discussion forward once you've expressed your own point of view. For example, this might involve summarizing the differences and similarities in each of your point of views, brainstorming on what different solution there might be. Think about possible suggestions that you might make to the other party about what you would like in return for them if you compromise on some aspects. Regarding those elements that you're not willing to negotiate or compromise on, Be clear in your mind about what the consequences might be if the person refuses to meet the bottom line and what you will do. It is better to be clear about your mind before the discussion. The author invites us in the next exercise of this chapter to use the deal method to discuss a problem with someone. The first part of this exercise would be to describe the situation. Personally, lately, we've came to the realization that condescending tones trigger us. The second step of this method is to express your feelings and thoughts about the situation. For us, we feel anxious, self-conscious, fearful, very uncomfortable, and scared, and we can't focus. The third step is to ask for a reasonable change that you would feel would help. For us, that would be to ask the person to change the tone in which they talk to us. The next step is to listen and to negotiate a reasonable solution when possible. It could be that we tell the person what we have to tell and the person does not agree with us or have a different point of view, in which case we will take the time to listen to their point of view, but also communicate to them that maybe we could be more mindful in our tone to make the reunion more pleasurable and more comfortable for everyone. Next, the author invites us onto another exercise. It is to use the STAR model. This is another method to improve assertiveness. The STAR model basically gives you a frame to analyze the aspects of a problematic situation, representing them in terms of the acronym STAR. The acronym stands for situation. What is the specific situation or type of situation which may create anxieties for you? Thoughts and feelings. What thought go through your mind and what do you say to yourself in the situation? Action. How do you typically act in the situation? How do you typically act in response to it? And result. What are usually the results for you in your action in practical term? And how do you feel afterwards? The author explains that using the STAR model involves 4 steps. Step 1. Describe a problematic situation using the STAR acronym. What was the situation? What were the thoughts and feelings in this situation? How did you act? And what are the results? Think about this for a minute. Now we will try to describe a situation using the STAR model. Personally, when we feel judged or criticized in work-related situation, but also in personal situation, we get spiraling bad thoughts, and we often react before we even get the time to think or process, which leads us to believe that some of this could be attributed to our mental health, but really, we're feeling scared, petrified, under attack. Action would be to panic, to defend, to dissociate, shut down, get angry, and the result is always the same, not getting our point across. Then we feel embarrassed, anxious, and like an alien. This is how we would describe a problem situation with the STAR acronym. This exercise involves a second step, which is to set up possible constructive alternatives and to write down possible things that you could try to help deal with potential problems relating to this. The author does remind us that it's important to reward ourselves each time we implement a constructive alternative. Personally, we are working hard on these types of issues for about 1 year constantly. It's been slowly working, so we will keep doing this type of work on ourselves. That being said, we're not perfect and we still make mistakes, and we're being kind to ourselves in the process. When we know that we're about to get some criticism, we are always very anxious. So we prepare ourselves for criticism by reminding ourselves that it's just someone's opinion. It's not that big of a deal. Now, let's spin off the subject a little bit out of the book. This is an image that really helped us to deal with criticism in the last year. let's go into the reality TV realm. On the show called RuPaul's Drag Race, there was a drag queen called Jinx Monsoon. And every time she was getting ready to receive criticism from the panel of judges, which, I mean, they're harsh, come on now, she'd repeat the phrase, "water off a duck's back." And back when we watched the show, it really helped us understand that criticism is not reality. It is merely another person's point of view influenced by their perception, their situation, and their emotions at that moment. Sometimes that person knows absolutely nothing about what they're talking about. Their opinion shouldn't matter. Put things in perspective. Zoom out. Try to look at the bigger picture. As Jing Monsoon said, water off a duck's back. Back to the book. The author suggests that when we prepare ourselves for constructive criticism, an idea would be to try to do meditation before and after. Meditation or breathing exercises will help, and it is important to keep into your brain that some people's opinion matters and some people's opinion just don't. It is part of your job as a person to decide what you keep and what you throw out. An alternate behavior for us that we are trying right now and will continue to work on is to not react right away, to listen, to try to record the information we're getting without judgment, with acceptance, to remind ourselves that we're not stupid. We're in a situation of learning and nobody's perfect. What we try to do now receiving criticism is to take a deep breath, say thank you for the comments, and try to focus on the rest while taking notes. We will come back to the information later after the process and we'll pick what we keep. After we're done taking criticism, we will do something different to take our minds off things, do something we love, and come back to the information after to pick what to keep. There is a third step in this exercise, which is select options and monitor success. Keep a record of what you try. The idea is to learn what works and what doesn't, and to keep the techniques that does help you deal with situation. So we will be monitoring these different options that we tried and keep trying, and we'll see what happens in the next few months. And this is the end of this exercise. To finish this chapter, the author underlines some of the key ideas from it. Empowering yourself is about acting assertively rather than passively or aggressively. Acting assertively involves expressing your own needs, wishes, and feelings clearly in a constructive way that also allows others to express their own. The deal method is a way of helping you to discuss an issue or a problem with someone. DEAL is an acronym for describe a situation, express your feelings and thoughts, ask for reasonable change, and listen. The STAR model is a way of addressing anxious patterns that may be preventing you from acting assertively. STAR is an acronym that stands for situation, thoughts and feelings, action, and results. Once you've analyzed the situation using the STAR model, the idea is to find possible constructive alternatives for each aspect. Choose some option to try out and monitor their success. Boom ba ba boom ba bam bam ba boom boom bam ba ba boom ba bam bam ba boom boom bam ba da bum ba bam bam ba bam 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 ba ba bam ba ba bam bam bam. Before we wrap up, we want to quickly share something that really helped us during a tough time. It's something we found personally valuable and maybe you will too. It's called Pay What You Can Peer Support. It's an online platform where you can connect with different support groups with real people who listen and share without judgment. They have groups for all kinds of experiences: ADHD, autism, bipolar, anxiety, depression, OCD, PTSD, postpartum struggles, addiction, eating disorders, chronic pain, LGBTQ+, survivors of domestic and narcissistic abuse, and more. If you're feeling low, lonely, or just need someone to talk to outside your usual circle, it's a reminder that there is support out there, and you do not have to go through hard stuff alone. The best part? You pay what you can. No pressure. no stigma. They do give us the advice to donate around $15 per session. If this speaks to you, check it out. The link will be in the show notes. Bum ba da bum ba bum bum ba bum boom 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 boom. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. As always, we would love to hear your thoughts. Have you read Accept, Value, and Empower Yourself by David Bonham-Carter? What were your takeaways? Drop a message and let's talk about it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the future episodes of the Ash Unmasked podcast. Thank you so much for fluttering by the pod. Can't wait to unmask more of this life journey with y'alls. Peace out and take care of yourselves out there. And remember, assertiveness is not about being loud or pushy. It is about communicating your needs clearly and respectfully, without guilt. Your thoughts, feelings, and boundaries are absolutely valid and worth expressing.